Welcome back to Steve Robb Reviews. Today is going to be, well, I hope you find this a fascinating video. It's going to be all about, well, an experiment. And I've been blessed with so many electrical engineers and electricians on my channel that they'll be able to follow along much easier than most other people. And I look forward to the comments from the electrical engineers to see if this is something that, is viable. Because I think it is myself. I'm not an electrical engineer, I'm not an electrician, but, I got just enough information just to make it dangerous. Okay, so hopefully it's not going to be dangerous. So the whole idea behind this video is, I showed a couple of videos back of this Go Boost cell phone signal booster. And it did a terrific job in my cabin up in Northern Ontario. And I went from having absolutely no service inside the cabin to between 3 and 5 bars consistently. So now I'm moving on to my little garage I have up there. Now I don't need a cell phone signal booster in my garage to make telephone calls and use everything else. But what I want to do is I want to set it up so I can use a cellular camera. So what I want to do is I want to use a cellular security camera, and the one I'm looking at is a new one that came out by Vosker, the V300, and it needs a good cellular service. So a friend of mine, he hooked one up at his place. He lives maybe a half an hour away from me, and he only has 1 bar, and he could not get this, the security camera to work where you don't have Wi-Fi. And this is a self-contained unit where it's got a little a little solar panel on top, rechargeable battery, and it needs at least a steady cellular signal. So this is what I'm going to try and hook up here. Now the only problem is that in my cabin, I only go up there, I use my cell phone signal booster on when I'm up there, and then I turn everything off. Now, I have mine hooked up to a 120 volt circuit, which is powered from my power inverter that gets its power from my power bank of 6 volt batteries. It's on a 12 volt system, and so inside the box here, I'm going to show you, it comes with a 120 volt plug-in, and then the other end goes to the power booster for your cellular service, and it converts it down to 5 volt DC. So what I want to do is I want to run this so that anybody that has a trailer or has a remote place or anything like that, you don't need to have anything except a 12 volt power supply. Now if you want to add a solar panel to it, well, that's fine, because you can recharge it, instead of just bringing the battery back and forth and charging it up at home. But this is going to be about the simplest way that I think. So I'm going to hook this all up, I'm going to show you all the different parts of it, and I'm going to explain exactly how you could actually get, if you have a remote location and you want to get more signal strength out of your cell phone, or if you want to put one of these cellular security cameras up at your place, but you don't have really good cell signal, well, this might be an opportunity for you. So I'm going to go over some of it right here, and then we're going to do some electrical testing. And I'm just going to mention first, the way my system works in my garage now, because I have a solar panel on there, I have a solar charge controller, and I have a power inverter. So all of them use current. And I know the way the system is now, I could just not leave it powered on 24/7, because I just drain my battery down and the thing would just shut down over time. Because my power inverter uses 1 amp an hour. That's 24 amps a day. So you get 3 or 4 cloudy days, and then you get snow on your solar panel. Well, you're in for a, not a good time, right? So what I'm planning on doing is just running this right off my charge controller. So the charge controller uses about maybe 20 milliamps just to have it operate to maintain the charge in the battery that I have up there. And I'm going to run it off of that only. No power inverter at all. And that's the main thing, is I don't have to have the power inverter on, It'll keep this powered up 24/7. And well, let's go through the math. Let's take a look at the system, and let's see if this is something that maybe you could think about yourself. If you have a remote location and you want to have just some cell service, or if you want to put one of these security cameras up that just won't work, because even if you do have 1 or 2 bars, this is what I've noticed about cell service. It comes in like in waves. Water comes in like water, like waves, because depending on the time of day, sunlight, leaves on the trees, no leaves on the trees, man, the cell service is all over the place, especially if you're up in the far north. So let's take a look at this now, and let's see how maybe this might be a great experiment, not only for me, but for you too. Well, let's start off here. This is the cell phone signal booster I got, and it's called Go Boost. I'll open that up. I haven't opened up nothing yet, but I just want to go over a couple of things. Like, I can't really recommend the type of wire you're going to use, that kind of stuff, because when it comes down to it, you're going to have to figure out the type of wire that you need for your particular situation, how far it is, from all the different assembly of parts that you're going to actually need. Now, you're going to need a fuse, right? So I'm planning on I'll just show you something here. You see how this is, I've already soldered this or tinned it, and you can see that it's flat, so I just hit it with the hammer a little bit, and it's going to go to my charge controller. Now, this is a spare charge controller, but you have your 2 leads that go into for your solar panel, 2 leads to go for your battery, and these are the 2 leads for if you have like a light, and this is good for up to about 10 amps. And it just fits in the socket here, and I'll just show you here. See in that socket? Well, they're flat pins, so I like to just tin them so that it doesn't just spread out all the stranded wire. But yeah, I can't really go over exactly what wire you need and that kind of stuff. There's all kinds of online calculators, but I will mention something. When you're looking at the measurements, you're going to have to realize that you got to have your wire suited for your measurements, which is be amperage. Now, there's absolutely no difference between amperage between AC and DC, but there is in testing it. So you got to turn your actual switch from AC to DC when you're measuring amperage. But all the amperage on AC is exactly the same as the amperage on DC. There is absolutely no different. An amp is an amp, no matter what the voltage is, but the wire size is completely different. So you got to measure, your amperage, and then go with what the voltage is that you're using. So this here is the unit that I'm going to use, and let me just turn it around the right way here. So if we take a look at it here, this is a DC to DC converter, and this here is actually manufactured to operate, boy, there's a lot of glare there, eh? Okay, so it can be 12 volt to 24 volt. Actually, it shows on the right hand side there in brackets. So if you got 8 volt to 40 volt DC, you're going to get coming out 5 volt up to 10 amps. Now all this is like a transformer, and this is like a heat sink, so they do get warm. And the only thing I can recommend is, I've used these before, and if you get close to the maximum amperage, you're just going to burn the unit up. So I figure my whole system is going to be maxed at about 3-4 amps. So I picked something that was 10 amps so you wouldn't overheat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear all this stuff out. I'm going to put the main parts in there that I need to show you, and I'm going to start testing. And I'm going to see how much power this will actually draw on this system here. And then in the next video, we're going to go up to Northern Ontario, and I'm going to show you it all installed and how it's wired up to my system. And hopefully, you're just going to see me wired up to here, and on my charge controller, and I'm going to bypass the whole power inverter. So I'll show you exactly the reason how this all works, and let's get to it right now. Okay, you ready? So let's just look at this right here. This is my DC power supply, and this is showing the amount of current that it's using in amperage. I got it set at 12.6 volts, and it's pretty close here, right? 0.02. So for a lot of people, they understand what these numbers are, but this is not even close to an amp. This is not even like, this is about like maybe, well, not even like a tenth of an amp. So this is like, it's using very low voltage and very low amperage. So this is 5 volts. It's supposed to be 5 volts. So now this is, I've had this on here for about 10 minutes and it's not getting hot, nothing like that. I just put this in here just to separate the wires. And I put the connector on the end here. And I'm going to try and do this one-handed here. But let me just get the polarity right here. And this is supposed to be coming out of the end here. Okay, now bear with me here. I don't know if I can do this one-handed. No, I can't do this one-handed. Come on. So what I'm going to do, I'll bring it back when I put it on the tripod. Now this is supposed to be 5 volts. So I'm not hooking this up. This goes into this plug right here. I'm not even going to try and hook this up unless I'm only getting 5 volts come out of here, around 5 volts. So let's test that next. Okay, so let's put the test probes on here. 5.1. So that's pretty good. So I'm confident now that I can hook it up to the repeater here, and let's do that next, and let's see how that operates. Okay, so let's take a look. So I have it plugged in, the light's on, and it jumped up from 0.02 to 0.2. So 0.2 is, well, just going to round that off to, wow, like that's not too much really when you're thinking about it. So my meter here says a 0.2, so say 0.25. So maybe if I'm reading that right, I'm thinking 1/4 of, well, 265 milliamps, 1/4 of 1 amp, maybe. So this is 12.6. Now we're going over to 5 volt. And remember, amperage is amperage regardless of the voltage. But as you reduce voltage, you increase amperage. So let's move it over to this side, because this is not how much amperage is being drawn. At this end is how much amperage is being drawn. So when we're talking about increasing amperage as you lower the voltage, let's take a look at this side here now. Yeah, 1/2 amp, which works out just perfectly because it's, well, it's a little bit less than half the amount of voltage, so you're going to have an increase in your amperage. So this is going to run at about 1/2 amp. Now this is actually 1/2 amp an hour, or about 12 amps in a 24-hour cycle. So what does that actually even mean to a lot of people? Because, you know, when it comes down to it, you know, what does that actually mean, all these numbers, right? And I've had this on here for a couple, this isn't even getting close to being warm. Now I could have bought one that was 5 amp. This here was $24. I could have bought one that was rated at 5 amps, but that's getting close to my maximum capacity, because I'm thinking if I have to actually add a feed to the camera, because the camera has a solar panel on it itself, but in the middle of winter, if it's covered in snow, well, the battery and the internal battery is only going to last maybe 60 days tops. So I'd like to add a power feed to that, and that would be, well, the camera I'm looking at is about 2 to 3 amps. So I didn't want to get the 5 amp unit, would have been $16, so I got this one here, and it's not even getting hot or warm or anything. So what does actually 1/2 amp, or say 12 amps a day, actually mean to the average person who wants to have one of these run 24/7? So let's just talk about that a bit and see if this system is viable for you. Okay, so what do all these numbers mean? Is this system viable for you? Okay, for me, 12 amps a day. So I do have a 100-watt solar panel sitting on my my garage, and I've got a deep cycle battery, just one 12-volt deep cycle battery. Now my 100-watt solar panel puts out around 5 amps an hour, only when the sun's shining. So when it's cloudy, well, it's a lot less. You're like under, say, under an amp. But I have to replenish that battery with 12 amps every day. Every day for this thing to run has to be 12 amps. So I need about 2.5 hours of sunshine to actually do that, to keep it completely charged from one day to the next. And I think the system that I have now with the 100-watt panel can do it. Now take, for instance, if you have no solar panel at all or anything and you're just going directly right to your 12-volt battery, bypass all this stuff completely, well, you should have no problem running this off a regular 12-volt battery for 2 or 3 days, as far as I'm concerned. Like a deep cycle battery, because the reserve capacity is, well, at least 25 amps would get you past 2 days, right? So I mean, just hooking up to a small little solar panel, like just a temporary one, or just, you know, if you're going up for the weekend, well, you could just use this no problem, you know, like for if you want to make phone calls and that kind of stuff. But if you want to run a security system, yeah, you're going to have a, you know, I'm going to try the 100-watt panel at first. I'm going to plug it in, I'm going to leave it run, and I'm going to see how it does with just, well, the way it is now. Because I'm thinking in my mind that, you know, yeah, you're going to get some days that are cloudy, you're going to get some days that are, you know, so I'm thinking I'm going to try it at first with just my 100-watt panel. It'll charge at about 5 amps an hour. So if I can get three, you know, like hours of sunlight, I'm good. You know, and like you say, some days it'll draw off of the battery because it's going to be cloudy for a couple of days, and then you get some sunlight. And even when it's cloudy out, it still charges. So I'm thinking this might be viable. But if I see it starting to drop, well, I'll just put another panel up, and that'll be it. But so far, like, this isn't having any heat. It's staying on, it's running, and I just want to explain something here. This is the plug that came with it. This 120-volt circuit, you plug it in. At this end, you get your 5 volts, right? And this is rated for 100 to 240 volts in, 50 or 60 cycles, megahertz, or hertz, I mean, and at a half an amp. Output is 5 volts, 2 amp. Now this is rated for 2 amp. There's no way this thing is drawing 2 amp. It's drawing like 1/10 of an amp, you know, on itself. And I believe the last time I tested it was like around 80 milliamps. So I mean, you could see how they rated this to be much higher than what it actually draws, so it doesn't overheat. And that's what I'm doing here, except I'm going like a lot higher. I'm going 10 amps. And this thing's not even getting warm because I want it to run 24/7. So stay tuned. If you have any questions, let me know. And for all you that are electrical engineers and electricians, let me know if you can see anything wrong with this. Because I really can't so far. I think I got the math down pretty good. I didn't want to go too crazy on the, you know, on the amperage readings and trying to say, you know, like a whole bunch of math equations, because it just confuses everything. So I mean, in my own experience, I know that this is using very little. So a half an amp, because I'll tell you something, just my power inverter on itself burns 1 amp an hour. So I'm bypassing all that. I'm just going right directly to the 12-volt source, and that's what I'm going to do through my charge controller. And that's rated at 10 amps, I believe, up there. So thanks for joining me here today. Stay tuned with this experiment. I'm going to set it all up when I get up there. It's much the same as what I did in my cabin, except I'm not plugging this into an extension cord. I'm plugging it right into the 12-volt supply. We're going to see how this works, and hopefully it does fine. And then after it's, you know, working great, then I'm going to get the security camera, and at least I'll have, I predict, between 3 to 5 bars steady all the time, And that way there, the cellular security camera will have no problem getting a steady signal, and that's what I want. And on the side of the security camera, on this V300, what I've been reading so far, it's just a new one that come out, it has the exact same jack as plugs into this one. It has a 5-volt supply, just like this one here, and it has an amperage capacity of keeping the battery charged up at 3 amps. So that's why I picked a higher amperage unit here, because now you could see I'm into actually 4 amps if I have to charge up the security camera battery. Because in the wintertime, if the snow's sitting on top of it, well, it's got to get its power from somewhere. And you know, like generally I shouldn't have a problem with that. I'm going to try it out without it. And but I'm thinking, okay, I'm not too sure how good the security camera, you know, like solar panel is, because you know the angle it's sitting at is like pretty flat, and I'm thinking the snow's just going to sit on top of that. Thanks for joining me here today. And if you haven't seen this channel, you're welcome to subscribe. I know this is a little bit of a drawn out video here of what I'm trying to do, but it's very complicated on how I'm trying to get this out of my mind into my garage up in Northern Ontario and get this system working. So stay tuned, because I'm going to try and make it for the next video, where this is going to be all installed. We're going to do some measurements up there to make sure it's verified the same as down there, and we'll see how the system works, because the install is going to be a little bit different than I did in my cabin. So stay tuned for that, and come back again. Let's have some more fun with some fun experiments, you know, that I do, and maybe, you know, this might be something that might help you out as well. And that's the whole idea behind YouTube, right? Cheers.